All right, good afternoon. Welcome back to the Pokemon Reinforcement Learning Project. As you can tell from the title or what you see here in the image is that the AI has learned to skate rather than explore. So what's happening here is last time we had put in a few new rewards for exploration in terms of proceeding around the map, one of them being this directional reward. And so what it's doing is it's going back and forth in the longest periods of time that it can. So that way it essentially is getting some points here for continuing to do this version of exploration. Get that reward up, and then it'll suddenly drop out. But you can see here, we should be getting into Vermilion City here and ready to approach the third gym. But it stops and decides to go back and forth in longer sections of the map. Earlier, it was going back and forth between this section here. You can see here going in Pewter City and another thing. So a lot of this side-to-side movement rather than continuing to explore its way through the map. And this has been going on for quite a bit of time. So since we had made some changes last time, we had additional rewards here for the frontier, which is supposed to be the spaces next to its current square that have not been explored. This is able to generate the number of squares nearby correctly. We do see that fluctuate quite a bit as it goes through here. And then that directional reward, so the longer it goes over and over, and then a revisit penalty, which is if it's been to that square in the past 500 steps, it will give a penalty based on how long it's been since the last time it visited that. So the combination of these two, the directional increase and this revisit change, is what's causing it to not continue exploring as much. So for this one, I don't think it's worth it to keep the directional reward in. What we're seeing here, again, is like at the beginning of the game, it was fine. It wasn't offering too much. And then as the other rewards decrease in time, so over time, this level reward decreases. The events, it stops finding them as often because like, for example, when it goes back down into Cerulean, there's not events for a little bit of time in terms of the number of steps that the agents take to find more of those. And so it really struggles then to find them. And so that's why it took it here. Basically, this has been running since the last time I streamed on Thursday. And it's just starting to realize that there are finally trainers here along the way to Viridian, because the whole way through, back from once it gets into Bill's house here, all the way back through Cerulean, there's one trainer battle here in this Rocket Trainer event, but it has to find that, and it's very hard for it to do because it's not along the main path. You just kind of have to almost accidentally find it, stumble across it. And so it finally figured that out and has now proceeded down here into Vermilion, but it had basically derailed itself along the way and started to explore the directional reward. So you can see here, basically for the first half of this training, it had been doing really well in just kind of proceeding along with the game. And then it started to realize I can manipulate this and I'm not getting as many rewards in other places. So I'm going to try and essentially maximize that. And you can see here, I tried it for a few runs, realizing that I'm not getting any event rewards by trying to exploit this early in the game. So then it's like, okay, I should start doing more and more in terms of the events. And then eventually, like I said, it started to break through to Vermilion. But overall, you can see here the badge scores. We're actually doing really well. And then as it started to exploit that, it started to drop because the agents were less incentivized to complete the path to Misty's area. And because it was getting these immediate short-term rewards in terms of the direction, it was willing to lose out on the longer-term rewards here. So I'm thinking that it's just best for us to drop the directional and see if it takes longer for exploration to begin. The frontier reward here, we're basically around this 0.3 mark with some dips along the way. These are more towards end of the runs as it stops having places to explore. We'll keep this in for now. I don't think it's causing any divergent behavior here in terms like the same way that the directional one is. And then we can see here the revisit penalty. It's typically fairly low, with sometimes it getting up to here. The 0.5 is almost the maximum that it can be. Along the way, it's about, what is that, about 50 steps or so from revisiting the same. And this was during the time where it was making those long trips back and forth. So on average, that was a negative reward 50. And the whole point of this is to keep it from spending too many times going in the same squares over and over again. So we may have to have it where there's like a general revisit penalty and then like a more immediate version of it. So if it's going back to the same square really frequently, in terms of instead of that 500 window, let's say if it revisits that square within the last, say, 50 or so steps, we give it like an additional 1 point penalty during that time, that would cause it to almost spike in terms of the reward there. So there's going to be two parts to that. So this is the directional persistence reward here. We're basically just going to tell it to not include that in the reward function here. So that way it's still there if we would ever want to go back to that. And then we'll go here and to this revisit penalty. And like I said, we'll implement that 1 point. 1 point penalty for that happening right away. So this is basically the time since last visit. The max, well, it changes last time. The max that it could be was about 500 or 5 points. And that was if it was taking a long time. We're seeing that that's not really the case here in terms of revisiting it. So we'll do basically a similar version of this. So take this out, copy it down. Let's just say 100. So if it's greater than 100, we're just going to do 0. Otherwise, we're just going to return the -5. So the goal here is to encourage some of those immediate revisit penalties, and then we'll come back up here. Perfect. And this is going to penalize the immediate backtracking. So the goal here is to keep it moving. This directional reward really wasn't panning out. Like I said, we basically lost about half of our training time to it trying to maximize this reward function. Last time we've gone through and we had doubled the general rewards here. It didn't seem like it was trying to really explore exploit the leveling rewards here. Kind of defaults to that after a while if there's no continuing exploration. Here, it was good to see here that there were a number of runs where it was using Butterfree more frequently. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep the step score or step results here because it had taken a bit of time. Actually, we'll take this back to 0 in terms of restarting it. So essentially, we will start from scratch when we do this. Let it run over, since today's Thursday, we'll run through the weekend. Try and get those about 200 to 300 million steps and see if we're continuing to proceed along and if we can make it back to the Vermilion at this point. If it doesn't, then we can always kind of roll back from the technical perspective and try and see if we can get back into the area. It looks like the run just about restarted. Let's see. Yeah, so it's just finishing up here, and then it'll restart. So I'll let that finish, and then we can save it. We'll have that final checkpoint here at about the 190 or 490 million step point, and then we can restart it. And hopefully we'll see how it's doing. Let's go through here, and let's just call this IR, so that way it's not getting too long. So we got the revisit and the immediate revisit menu. It captures, which was good to see that it had not only continued to progress in terms of levels here, but also then in terms of the capture here. And then you can see kind of once it started to exploit the directional score, we had a real nice positive trend here, and then it kind of dropped off. We haven't recovered since then. So I'm hoping that that will continue to trend up. We were seeing pretty good diversity too in terms of the teams of Pokemon that it was running. I saw a few that had Butterfrees and Beedrills, which is good. A lot of them have War Turtles, sometimes having Blastoise, although very rare for those because it has leveled up. A lot of times I've seen also Pidgeotos in the parties, which is a good general Pokemon for it to have. So like I said, we'll wait for it here. It's now on the final batch, and then we'll bring it down, and we'll start with the new rewards here. So I'll leave this open for questions for now, and then we'll transition to what I can do is I can switch this over to the live running stream with the most recent version. I'm just afraid that we'll end up with it going back and forth, but at least for the first while, we can see how it kind of explores through everything. So you can see here, as not showing all of the agent rewards here, but it's overall, we're getting really high scores here, way better than we had in previous runs. We can go back here. You can see I had different versions. Every day, basically, I was taking this training model and was updating the live stream that was running to the more recent versions. But you can see here, this will be an older one, but you can see here, overall, this one was when it was exploiting the directional reward. So it was just on a straight climb up until basically it reset. And it was doing that over and over again. And then you can look here at the previous training versions. The total was only getting to the 500 range. So we've gotten way more out of it. And that is one thing we want to be cautious of when we are moving this directional reward, to see that we're still continuing that upward trend. So it looks like it's already off and running again because I can see them into Viridian Forest. So we'll bring that off. Just make sure this is saved here. Save. It's going to take a moment to run down, but what I'll do is I'll pass this file over, and then I will bring on the live stream version to show the progress here, and hopefully we'll see a couple of them get into Vermilion, which would be great. So do that here. So that will kick that off. You should see it come online here in a moment. But all in all, that's really it for today. We've had great progress, I think, compared to it. We're making small tweaks here around the edges just to see if we can continue. I think one of the next things that we will run into with the project in general will be having it figure out cut. But I'm hoping that it has enough steps here to do it. We can always increase the length here for how long we're running. We're only doing cycles of 200,000 steps. But seeing that is more than enough for it to get into Vermilion has been really a positive influence. In previous versions, we were even having issues getting out of Mount Moon. So we're now progressing past that, which is good. And then once we figure out cut, kind of the game opens up significantly there, because it just, the map at this point becomes less directional. Even if it goes into Vermilion here, if it never figures out cut, it could end up going the long way around to Celadon, fighting a bunch of trainers here to gather those rewards. One of the things that it will probably struggle with there is you need cut in Celadon to go through the gym. It may end up going around here and fighting Koga. That'll be interesting because the walls will kind of curtail it but won't stop it. So it can probably pick up that badge without cut. And then what else? Could it do? I guess it could do the Pokemon Tower without that as well. What else would there be? Yeah, I kind of think that's it as far as what it can get there. Yeah, I don't think it can do. It can't get into here without the Pokemon Flute, which would be really hard for it to do. So it'd have to go through Celadon. So it might get there. At that point, we're probably extending the length of it. But cut will be one of the bigger hurdles there, as it can't go through enough of the gyms to proceed in the game. So we'll see how that progress comes along here. It looks like because we have those sharp penalties for not moving too frequently, that is getting it, or revisiting the same space too frequently, that is getting it out and already into the grass there. I do see a few have some of those initial events, so this should be good in terms of getting them out and about. And hopefully we continue to see increases here. So we'll let this run for the next day, and now I'll transition over to the long-running stream where we'll watch the AI agents play through the previous model iteration. And hopefully we can have another good update here. It'll be on Tuesday for the next time we talk about the Pokemon project. So for those of you who came and watched, thank you very much. I'll keep this short and sweet, and I'll see you next time.